Tonight on the Hoosier Tailgate, the road to the college football playoffs comes down to three battles. Those are Penn State, Wisconsin, and Purdue to finish up the 2025 season, and those games stand between the Hoosiers and history. Can Indiana power through the gauntlet and secure a second straight CF college football playoff bid? We'll break down the matchup, spotlight the game changers, and tell you exactly what is going to take to finish strong. Buckle up. The Hoosier Tailgate starts now.
Walking them down. Woo! IU America. They got a football team now.
Hello again, everybody. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith, and welcome to another edition of the Hoosier Football Tailgate here on thehoosier.com. We appreciate you joining us here this evening. Got a good show for you here tonight. And just a reminder, if you'd like to participate, we encourage that by putting your questions into the chat. And if we can get you the answer, I will do my best to give you a truthful answer. But we encourage you to do so as part of the Hoosier Tailgate's live stream as well. If you could do one thing, make sure you like and comment, subscribe to the channel on the Hoosier on 3 channel on YouTube. We greatly appreciate that as well. And also, if you could do me a favor, if you listen to the Tailgate via the podcast version on Spotify or Apple Podcast, by giving us a rating and review there, it will help in us being the #1 source for all things Hoosier football. But it does a great thing in terms of putting us in front of others that may not be aware of the show. And it only takes a few minutes, not even that, to complete a review and a rating for us. And I appreciate that. So enough of the cleanup work, but again, we want to thank you for joining us here on the show today. Tonight, we are going to talk a little bit with Colin McMahon here shortly about the practices that Colin has been able to observe here of late on campus, as Indiana was back at it today on campus with a shells type of practice this afternoon after having the day off yesterday from competition, and went at it today. And of course, they'll go at it again tomorrow. But Saturday is a big day for the Hoosiers, as their first full contact 11-on-11 scrimmage will be held in the stadium, I presume, unless they run into weather issues. But it's a huge day as it pertains to ironing out the top 22 on offense and defense and evaluating the younger players, because you just don't know which one of those young guys could step into the spotlight. You know, Baldwin on defense has shown great promise, as has Bond wide receiver, 2 guys that were involved in spring and have carried that over through the summer and now into camp, are vying for playing time in their 2 deep, and also opportunities via special teams. So we're going to have you covered with all that, as well as the Hoosier.com crew will get over and do the best they can do to have that covered on Saturday, especially when Monday rolls around for a follow-up media availability as well. But big week, finishing it off here for the Hoosiers. And like I said, it's we're going to be 3 weeks out from this Saturday before Old Dominion comes into Memorial Stadium for a 2:30 kickoff. That will be on Fox 1. And it's hard to believe that we're approaching that very quickly here. Football season 2025 is right upon us. So pretty exciting time here at the Hoosier Tailgate, and a exciting time for Indiana athletics as a whole, as the basketball team got their first look of their new lineup down in Puerto Rico, where they came out victorious last night against a Puerto Rican college team, 98-47. You can find all that coverage, as with everything, on the Hoosier.com, as well with our good buddy Jim Coyle, who is down there sweating, as he would say, in San Juan. But I'm sure he's getting a chance to enjoy the weather, as well as a chance to enjoy seeing the Hoosiers' first chance to get out on the court and run around. And we just know how that is, having been waiting for Coach Signetti and his group to get out and run around as well. And Robert, you got it. Football season is getting closer, and we're going to have it all right here as the number one source for all things Indiana football, the Hoosier Tailgate on the Hoosier.com, as we start progressing towards our twice-a-week broadcast. Once we get into game week, we will broadcast on Mondays and Thursdays, with Mondays being a recap of the previous Saturday's game, and Thursdays being a preview of the next opponent for the Indiana Hoosiers, with video coverage as well, breakdowns, things of that magnitude. Try to take you in the meeting room, so to speak, and give you an idea of A, what they may have did right or wrong on a game day, and B, what can you expect from the team that's coming up against the Hoosiers in their next contest. The first coaches poll was released, as Indiana was ranked 19th overall on the coaches poll, and not too much of a surprise there, you could say, with that ranking for Indiana. It, as far as the rankings go, it's nothing that it means a ton right now with those rankings, but it does give you a little bit of I would say, a shot in the arm, having been recognized for your previous season schedule and how well you did. Some may believe that Indiana deserved to be a little bit higher rated than 19, but Joe Klatt from the Fox group and team of broadcasters there at Fox Sports had Indiana as number 17 in his poll. So you're going to get a different variety here up until we get started in playing. But right now, Indiana at least being recognized as a team in the top 25. And that says a lot for a team that hasn't seen a lot of top 25 rankings, especially before the season even started. So you got to take the good and the bad with the equation, I guess. You may want them higher, but the fact of the matter is they're in. And for Indiana to be ranked in the top 25 in the preseason polls is a pretty good thing, because it never has happened in years past as much, I would say, as it's going to under Coach Signetti and his crew. But it's good to see that. I know if you were watching Jim Coyle's show this week, we talked about ESPN's Heather Dinich, or I believe that's how you pronounce her last name, who is an IU grad, and she had a 32-team probability of making the playoffs, and Indiana was not even mentioned in her 32-team probability breakdown. She had teams like Kansas in there, Nebraska. Some of these teams had losing records last year, and she decides to leave Indiana out of the equation. So, hey, it's like you said, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And right now it really doesn't mean that much. So, but Indiana right now, getting a nod in the Coach's Poll is a lot to be said, because that's amongst the peers that you're going against week in, week out, and them recognizing you getting a chance to have a team in that top 25. Also, some things today that came out as well is Mendoza on the Davey O'Brien Award preseason watch list for Fernando, putting another very nice preseason list to be a part of, as he has, really picked up a lot of attention going through the spring, and even more so here in the summer months, as he has been recognized and on many other lists as well, including the AFA Good Works team. So that in itself is a very important facet to understand with that. So impressive there by Fernando. And then in the sporting news, preseason All-American team, Aiden Fisher and D'Angelo Pons were two that were recognized as preseason All-American team. So those are pretty nice recognitions for the Hoosiers, as they've picked up several preseason awards and watch list for the 2025 season, something that haven't seen much of in the past. So it's very good to get that recognition for Indiana. A couple things here before we get over to Colin here. Mr. Lee Corso, happy birthday to Coach Corso today. And he's embarking on his final year with College Game Day in a very spotty appearance. I think he's going to be on week 1 for sure. But happy birthday to the coach. And if there's one person that's fairly happy for what is happening in Bloomington, he is a coach that's very happy to see what's going on. We talked about Fishers and Pons being on the All-American list. And then the last thing here, which I think is important, Illinois at Indiana is sold out. So that ball game is sold out. So if you don't have any tickets, you're going to have to see if you can find them via other avenues. But that game is sold out. And there are several other Big Ten contests that are at home that are on the verge of being sold out. So if you are wanting to attend those, you better get your tickets before they become totally sold out. I do hope those games that are there at the first of the season, especially teams like Old Dominion and Kanawha State and Indiana State, it'd be nice to have those games sold out. But I do think they had less than 10,000 for Old Dominion available, is from what I'm understanding. But again, it's a pretty good way to start the year, having the Illinois game already sold out in a very, very important ball game for the Hoosiers. When you think about the start of that 3-game gauntlet that we've talked about throughout the last couple of weeks. And we're going to get Colin in here real quick and making sure that he can hear us fine. Colin, can you hear us?
Yes.
All right. That's good. That's the first good sign right there. Secondly, and making sure with our fellow chatters in the chat room, whether it be YouTube or Facebook, if you could let us know for sure if we don't have any echo going on as well. It'd be great if we could, to make sure that we don't have anything like that. But I don't think we will, because I found out what we did wrong last time, and we're going to take care of it tonight. But hey, man, I appreciate you joining us here tonight. I was just kind of filling everyone in here on, anything. Let's see here. He says there's an echo already. Here we go again. Make sure that we got everything situated correctly. I don't see anything. Go ahead and say a couple things there on your end.
Sure. Yeah. Your
Can
last
you
point
hear me?
about the yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Go ahead and
Yeah,
keep
it's
talking there so I can try to get this all settled up for us here so we can talk freely.
for sure. While we test out the echo situation, I would expect the Old Dominion game to sell out in the next week or two. I would be honestly shocked if he says I have an echo again, huh?
Yeah, go keep going. I think I got it solved now.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, when the Hoosiers take the field in week 1, I would expect every single seat to be filled. It's week 1. It's going to be a top 20 released on Monday. We saw the coaches poll get released last Monday with Indiana at 19, if I remember correctly. And Old Dominion obviously isn't the toughest opponent, not the most entertaining game of this season for sure, but with it being week 1, I would expect it to be sold out. And then as the season goes along, I would expect sellout after sellout, assuming that Indiana gets 3 wins right off of the bat. And then depending on the Illinois game, we'll see how that goes. You've mentioned how important the Illinois, Iowa, and then Oregon games are. And I couldn't agree more. And I think that if Indiana gets out of those games with a 5-1 or better record, I would expect every single game to be sold out at Memorial Stadium this fall.
Yeah, we've been doing a 4-part series here of breaking down in groups of 3 of the games of the 2025 schedule. And tonight we will finish up with the final 3 games, Penn State, Wisconsin, and Purdue. After we conclude our conversation, and you're correct, there's an opportunity if Indiana could go into Happy Valley at 9-0, if God wills it, or 8-1. That game will have a significant meaning in the Big Ten and for Penn State and Indiana, which will probably mean a whiteout, and it will probably mean a national televised game, which would be great for all involved, especially Hoosier fans throughout the country, if that were to occur. And opportunity exists there. And hey, if they can take care of business, then those type of things help them immensely with those type of opportunities for Indiana to take advantage of. And hopefully Indiana, it gets themselves off to the right start. And those 3 games, because Old Dominion will be a challenge. They give South Carolina all they could handle last year, 23-19. And I just, they're picked 3rd, I believe, in their conference. Signetti and crew are very well aware of what type of ball club they are and the capabilities that they have. So it's not going to be a game that Indiana is going to be able to sit back and cruise through, where they're up for a rude awakening. And I just don't see this coaching staff allowing that to happen.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, Signetti has mentioned, doesn't matter if they're playing number 1 ranked Ohio State or Texas, or they're playing a JV high school squad, his team is going to give 100% from the minute the whistle is blown until the final buzzer. I think that Old Dominion is a mid-level group of 5 team, meaning they're not the worst of the worst, but also I wouldn't consider them to be the best of the best at the group of 5 level. Obviously, they're better than most teams, but I do think that no one is going to say at the end of the season, man, that Old Dominion win, that was solid. And we could get into scheduling debates, and I feel like those have honestly run their course for the off season is concerned.
We've beat that dead horse.
Exactly. And I think especially with it being week one, Indiana is really going to give it their all and try to give their fans, especially a presumably sold out crowd, they're going to try to put on a show. And for Signetti, a show doesn't mean, being flamboyant and all that. They're going to put on a show by doing the fundamentals the right way
Right.
and, winning the right way. And so obviously after that, you have Kennesaw State, which I would consider a lower tier group of five team.
Right.
They're new to the FBS. Only a couple years ago they made that jump, and obviously, when James Madison made the jump, they had a great transition. But for most teams, jumping from FCS to FBS, it does take a couple years to kind of get your footing. And Kennesaw State is in that situation right now. So, and then Indiana State obviously is a FCS team, and so if you lose to an FCS team, basically your entire season is foregone. And so obviously that would be a loss of historic proportions, and I don't see that happening. And so, like I've mentioned, like you've mentioned, the Illinois game is really that's the game right there. Obviously, there are 12 games in the season, and every game matters. But if I'm circling one game, it is that one. If Indiana loses, chances of the Hoosiers repeating as a CFP team are slim to none, I would say. But if they do win, they have every opportunity in the world to go back to the playoff, just because they can afford losses to Oregon and Penn State. I don't think they can afford a loss to Illinois. I really don't.
Well, it all depends, and like anything else in this crazy game, is how one does throughout the rest of the year. What may be perceived as a bad loss, unless you're Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois, may change by the time the end of the year comes by, because maybe that team has knocked off a couple other schools that they maybe weren't supposed to beat. So it's all in the hands of Indiana. They control their own destiny at this point, and we'll see what all happens as we go through here. I know you've been out at practice a few times, been able to take them in, and you wanted to kind of get your sense of what you've seen to date out at practice, just in an observant fashion. Not that you're going to, sit here and break down offense and defense, but you get a feeling for guys that, fly around, and you get an idea of who that is and who are those guys that are flashing consistently. What has been your take of the practices that you've been able to observe thus far?
Yeah, for us media, we get to view practice for approximately 30 minutes. The majority of that is kind of just rudimentary drills, stretches to start, and then they break off in their position groups. Um, there's nothing groundbreaking happening during the sessions that we're able to observe, and that's fairly standard for college football. They're trying to keep their plays in house. They're trying to develop their plays without media overlooking them. That's kind of the standard. And so from what I've seen, practices have gone smoothly. Everyone on the team is focused. There's kind of a sense around the team, and of course, with the coaching staff, that they're on a mission, and that mission starts in spring practice in the off season. But as far as fall goes, it starts day one of fall camp. That's kind of the beginning of the journey, right? And so they're giving 100% on every play. That obviously doesn't mean they're going full contact every play, but every given drill, every player is giving 100%, and that starts with the leaders. And what I've noticed is that Aiden Fisher has been the leader of the defense, but D'Angelo Pons is right there behind him. Obviously, he's not necessarily a young guy anymore as a true junior, but there are a lot of guys on the team with a lot more experience than him. But he's kind of become a leader, especially in the cornerback room. As far as drills go, the leader of that position group is who normally goes first. And so for defensive linemen, it is Mikhail Kamara. For linebackers, it's obviously Aiden Fisher. But then for the defensive backs, and they usually break them down into cornerbacks and then safeties. For the cornerbacks, it is D'Angelo Pons. He is kind of that voice, and he's not a very vocal guy in the way that Aiden Fisher might be, but
Right.
he's very focused. He knows what he needs to do, and he knows what he needs out of his teammates. And so, just as a true junior, I've kind of seen D'Angelo Pons, get into that role where on the field he is expected to be one of the leaders. With Aiden Fisher there at linebacker, he's the quarterback of the defense, obviously, but right there behind him, Pons is going to be such an important player, not only because of the skill level that he's at, but he's developing into a leader. And I think that'll not only translate into wins this season, but for his NFL future, it's huge. He's still an undersized guy, but if he can make up for that size with leadership, with a voice, I think that'll work wonders for him. And so that's one takeaway. Another takeaway is Fernando Mendoza in himself. I think that he's a passer that Indiana fans will say, wow. Curtis Rourke, he had a great arm, and this isn't a knock on what he accomplished because he was possibly the greatest single season quarterback in Indiana history. Fernando Mendoza just has kind of a different feel to his ball, the zip that he has, and I haven't seen it too often just because on Monday when I was there, he didn't throw many deep routes, and Tuesday I was mostly focused on the defense. But from what I did see is he just kind of has a way about him. It's very imposing. He's a big guy at the quarterback position. I think that he's going to be highly successful. I think that he's going to get first round looks in this year's NFL draft, and I think that the offense is going to be really lucky to have him. I mentioned I looked more at the defensive side of the ball on Tuesday. Uh, Zach was looking more on the offensive side of the ball on Tuesday, and he mentioned that Kurt Cignetti was a little frustrated with the offense, and so that's not something that I personally got to witness or observe. But from what Zach wrote down in his notes in the forums, it seemed like the offense was a little out of sorts on Tuesday, and so when we go and view practice tomorrow morning, I'm interested to see. I'm going to keep my eye on how the offense kind of operates and kind of what they've done the past couple of days. But as far as the defensive side of the ball, where I was focused on Tuesday, they look really sound. I don't think that there's a weak link in this defense. I think that the talent is there, the depth is there, the leadership is there. And I think that for as good as it was last year, this year, we're going to be in for something special.
No question. And talking with Colin McMahon from the Hoosier.com, he was referring Zach Browning's article, and his article is up on the Hoosier.com, and his observation to date on the offensive side of the football and his take on some guys that have had really good practices to date, and really talked about Carter Smith and what he has done thus far on the offensive side of the ball. Colin had a chance to really review the defensive groups that we, here we're talking about tonight. And, I think one of the big things for Indiana right now, there's two position groups that I think are a wait and see. And that would be number one up front in the defensive line, outside of Kamara, of course. He's in that odd stud linebacker position where he could be the fourth D lineman down with his hand on the ground, or a stand-up linebacker that could also be dropping into pass coverage. But I think it was the other day, Coogan had talked very highly of Hoser Wheeler, the kid out of Western Kentucky, having a pretty good camp so far, as was Tyreek Tucker. Returning D lineman, had a good year last year. Didn't have a great spring, but it seems thus far he's stacking some days here in camp that's made him be noticed by the coaching staff, effort and play wise. And then don't forget about Stephen Daly, the kid from Kent State. Anything on that to add on to the equation? I also saw where Ratcliffe was mentioned in that, and then of course the Kalen Watt kid out of Maryland. But those three guys, Wheeler, Tucker, and Ratcliffe, I think are what Indiana and Daly picked up via the portal are going to be a big help on the inside for the most part.
Yeah,
your thoughts on that?
The three transfers you mentioned, Ratcliffe, Wheeler, and Daly, those are all incredibly important guys. But I think that a wild card is Kellen Wyatt. I think that he's, we've mentioned in previous weeks, he's a versatile player. I think that he kind of fits the mold of a stud position fairly well. And so for Kamara to go into that role would be a huge bonus for Indiana. But if they decide that we're going to have Kamara play more defensive end like he did last season, you could have Kellen Wyatt jump into that role as the stud and, possibly switch it up that way. And so I think that there are a lot of different ways you can go about it. There's a lot of moving pieces. And so I don't believe that the front four are going to be the best position on the defense. But like I said earlier, there's no true weak link. I think that this is a talented group. This is a group with a lot of experience. You have Kamara as an incredibly experienced guy. Wheeler is a fifth-year senior. Ratcliffe is a fifth-year senior. Daly is a senior. And so Tyreek Tucker is a redshirt junior. And so you have a lot of experience. Stephen Daly coming in from Kent State. I think that he might be, honestly, the X factor. We've mentioned Tucker. Tucker's a returner that showed flashes of being a great player last year. And in an elevated role, you could really see him kind of blossom. Ratcliffe isn't projected to start, but again, with the moving parts on the defense, you might see him get a lot of snaps and a lot of productive snaps. And so there are a lot of good players on this defensive line. All eyes are going to be on Kamara, and so if Kamara gets double teamed, you might see a lot of the other guys, start to rack up some sacks, some tackles for loss, etc. And so I think that this is going to be a good positional group, not the best on the defense, but certainly one that you are not worried about heading into the season.
Well, if you want to get the full breakdown of both Colin and Zach's take on the Hoosiers up to date, go on over to thehoosier.com and pay that $1 subscription fee for the first month and 50% off for the first year, and you'll get a whole lot more of just those two and some other guys that do a great job over there, and including all the On3 stuff that's out there as well. Well, Colin, I appreciate you joining me here this evening and giving us the breakdown of what you've seen up to date. I know this Saturday is a big scrimmage, and I hope that you guys will get a chance to sneak around a little bit and maybe peek at it here and there. But come on back next time, and we'll get some more information out of you before we hit the season.
Yep. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
All righty. Colin McMahon from thehoosier.com joining us there. And going to take a break here real quick and learn some things from BetUS, a proud affiliate of the Hoosier Football Tailgate on thehoosier.com. We'll be right back right after this.
Hoosier Football Tailgate is sponsored by BetUS. Use promo code TAILGATE and get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first deposit. BetUS is where the game starts.
Welcome back to the Hoosier Football Tailgate as we get back involved here with our final three games of the 2025 season. Appreciate Colin for coming on tonight. Also, thank you for joining us here on our live stream on the Hoosier Tailgate. Hope you're enjoying the show, and we're going to get talking here about our final three games of the season. And it's one of those things that just after 1 year from crashing the college football playoffs for the very first time, Indiana could be right back in the hunt for a second straight bid after a stunning 11-2 season in 2024, a run where their only losses came to powerhouse Ohio State, and then, of course, the first round playoff loss to Notre Dame. Coach Cignetti has this program thinking big. His work earned him a pile of Coach of the Year honors and awards as he's built a new identity in Bloomington, one based on toughness, discipline, and absolute refusal to lose. But the final stretch of the climb is always the toughest and the steepest, and the path back to the playoffs isn't always that clear when you get to those final 3 games against a duo of Big Ten giants and former giants in Purdue in the Old Oaken Bucket, and Barry Odom's first year as the coach there in West Lafayette. It will be an interesting final 3 weeks of the season because 2 out of the 3 of those teams we're not quite sure we're going to get. Wisconsin has a new offense and defensive coordinator. Purdue has a completely new staff, brought in over 54 portal transfers. And remember, Purdue last year got embarrassed in Bloomington, 66-0. And I can guarantee you that will not set well, even though Coach Odom was not there. It's something that he will definitely utilize as he gets his Boilermakers ready to go in 2025. To lock up their second season or second straight college football playoff right now, Indiana's just going to have to win, and they're going to have to survive some too. They need to march in the lion's den, so to speak, defend their home turf against a team like Illinois, and also a game like Wisconsin, for instance. So the margin for error coming into those last 3 weeks is really 0. We're going to just talk about these 3 teams. We're going to break it down a little bit, talk about some key players from each of them that you're going to have to keep an eye on because they're the type of players that can also break open games. And the whole thing is centered around Indiana's championship dreams because the final boss rush, so to speak, is Indiana's path to the playoff is going to have 3 games that feature a game against Penn State, which could have monumental aspects to it and potentially a pivotal game in the Big Ten conference race. And on top of that, if Indiana would roll in there 8-1 at worst, maybe 9-0, look out, because that could be a game for the ages in Happy Valley, a place where Indiana has not won in quite a few years. That's kind of hard to believe. They have not won there in Happy Valley. Come close a few times, but have not yet been able to get a victory there in State College. That game right now slated for November the 8th, and James Franklin there in his 12th season. This isn't just another game. It's a test of belief as well. Beaver Stadium, despite its name, Happy Valley, has been a house of horrors for the Hoosiers. Indiana has played Penn State in their stadium more than a dozen times, and they've lost every single game. They've never won in Happy Valley. If IU wants to be seen as a true contender, that streak really needs to die, and it has to die now. Of all times, it's better to do it right now in a season where Indiana is going to have some tougher competition on the front end. And this just isn't any Penn State team there for James Franklin. As you can see, they were a 13-1 ball club last year, and they are picked to win it in the Big Ten Conference, and they're also in the top 5, I believe, in the country on the coaches poll, but they are a perennial top 10 contender. They recruit at an elite level, and they put out some really good NFL talent. And then their defense has done a great job, especially in their own backyard. And new defensive coordinator for Penn State is Jim Knowles, who they attracted away from Ohio State when Tom Allen defected to Clemson at the end of the year. And like I said, this could be a true whiteout environment there in Happy Valley, and over 100,000 in attendance. Penn State's identity is built on a suffocating defense and a powerful, efficient offense. They return a huge amount of their offensive production from last season, making them one of the most experienced units in the country. They know exactly who they are, and for Indiana, this is a game that the ultimate test will be. A win here could not just help them in the Big Ten standings, it does send a message to the entire country that the Hoosiers are for real, and it will calm down a lot of the chirps of soft schedule. But a loss confirms the old narrative. They're not good enough as a team to get over the hump of beating a top-tier team in the Big Ten. And the guy who holds the keys to this game is one with the ball in his hands on every single play for the Penn State Nittany Lions. And he's a guy that is going to be an NFL player, and that's Drew Aller, the quarterback for Penn State. As we look at some of their statistics up there on the graphics, as you can see, second year for their offensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, like I said already, first year, 12th season for Coach Franklin, 13-1 a year ago, averaged 33 points a game, 430 yards of offense, and their defense under Coach Allen only gave up 16 points, 5 points a game, and 295 yards of offense per game. So a pretty good all-around defensive group there in Happy Valley that you can see there. And you can see, again, here, when we talk about Drew Aller, he is a guy that is the embodiment of Penn State's championships hopes. He arrived on campus. He was a 5-star, can't-miss prospect with a cannon for an arm. Now heading into the 2025 season, he's a seasoned veteran with 2 full years of starting experience, and he's seen all from the hostile road games to the biggest stages in the sport. That experience is his greatest weapon and Indiana's biggest threat. Aller is a classic pro-style quarterback. He has the arm talent to make every throw imaginable, from the darts into tight windows to the deep ball where he can throw it up and let his wideouts go get it with minimal effort to go get the ball some 50 yards down the field. But what makes him so deadly now is that his mind has caught up to his arm. His ability to read defense, know where to go with the ball when his first option is covered, and most importantly, he doesn't flinch under pressure. Indiana's defense is going to have to find ways of creating chaos and forcing turnovers in this ball game. That has been something that Aller has had some struggle with through the year. They're going to have to try to confuse him and overwhelm him during this ball game, and they're going to want to utilize Kamara as well wanting him to live in the backfield in this ball game. They don't need their standout linebacker, Aiden Fisher. Will have to clog up the passing lanes, and also count on their corners, Pounds and Sharp, to play some true man-to-man coverage against elite wide receivers that Penn State was able to bring in this past year. Aller has seen it all before. He's good at standing in the pocket against some of the best pass rushers in the country and been able to deliver strikes, but he's been able to diagnose some complex blitzes and made defenses pay. When the pocket breaks down, he really doesn't panic. He He does have some mobility to get down the field, but nothing that's going to threaten you with his speed. But he can also force you into coming up and then throwing it over the top. Indiana will just have to do everything right in Happy Valley. And they're going to have to force those third and long type of conversion downs where they get Penn State into absolute guessing games with Indiana's defense in terms of what they're going to do. We've got the game from last year in their college football playoffs playing, as you can see here, as a reminder of some of the players that they got and what they have. And this is a game that unfortunately they lost, but there's one of their tough backs, and you can see big and strong they have in the backfield that are able to break tackles. Indiana's going to have to make Aller uncomfortable, and their defensive front has to get him on the ground and not just pressure him. They cannot allow him to stand back there and play his game, a calm, cool, and collected ball game, because it will not matter how the Hoosiers play. He will be able to just pick you apart. But that's going to be a situation for Indiana as they head into Happy Valley in a potential game that could have a lot riding on it heading into the 2025 season. Looking at it from this point of view right now, all things look as that could be a very, very big and important game for the Hoosiers heading into next season. Offensively for Indiana against this defense, again, they're facing Jim Knowles, who gave them some problems last year at Ohio State. So Indiana is going to have to be prepared with what was shown against them a year ago, as well as dealing again with a crowd that has a lot of volume with it. And Indiana is going to have to show composure in Happy Valley, establish a running game, and then allow Elijah Surratt and others get down the field with their RPO game and then take the calculated shots they need against a Penn State defense that is pretty darn good on all fronts when you think about it. So that ball game will definitely be a slobber knocker, as we like to say, with things. But Indiana is going to have to find a game plan that allows them to control the ball, take calculated risk, go in there with the mentality of winning the game, not to survive the game, but to win the game, and not think about where they're playing and who they're playing against. Penn State will be ready. They've got talent. They're ranked as high as 1 in the Big Ten Conference. And when you think about it, they're going to be a team that has national title aspirations. That's the thing that's really hurt Coach Franklin through the years, is he's not been able to get over the hump when it comes to winning championships. That has been a destiny that he has not yet captured in Happy Valley. Next up will be the Wisconsin Badgers, Luke Fickell's third season. As you can see there, 5-7 a year ago, 3-6 in the Big Ten. Then things just have not gone right for Luke Fickell. When he was hired there was a lot of hope and feeling that he was going to advance them. And coming from Cincinnati, where he had a couple historic years at Cincinnati and really good ball clubs, he really has struggled at Wisconsin thus far. As you can see, the over and under bet is 5.5 games, but their conference title odds are 8,000. So not very good chances from that perspective for Coach Fickell and his Wisconsin Badgers as they come to Indiana late in the season, probably senior day to think of it that way, and a game that will be an interesting coming off a Penn State game. Well, it will be a game that it could have Indiana in a trap game type of mentality, or Indiana licking their wounds. if Indiana pulls off a historic upset at Penn State, there's no time to breathe, essentially, because they come in next week on the 15th when the Badgers come home. And at that time, we're going to know whether Wisconsin has flipped it, because they made a lot of changes offensively up there, hiring Jeff Grimes as their first-year offensive coordinator and getting away from the spread offensive concepts that they had been utilizing that has led to some disappointing seasons in Madison. Fickell is under a lot of pressure to get the team back to these winning ways. And the Badgers right now could also be a wounded animal with nothing to lose heading into Bloomington in November. And that's what makes a team like Wisconsin a little scary, because they're going to have some able-bodied guys up along the offense and defensive line that can do a lot of damage in terms of stopping the running game and as well as opening the running lanes. So this type of game, I think I've got Mr. Wisconsin wrong at 13-1 last year, so that's wrong. But they averaged 350 yards last year, 22.6 yards a game offensively. But when you look at their defense, they only gave up 342 yards and only 23.1 points a game a year ago. So they had a defense that was fairly capable of playing some pretty darn good defense. They just could not do anything offensively there in Madison last year. And they were 5-7, like I said, 30-6 in the Big Ten, tied for 12th. And you can see some of their statistical data as you look there. And the guys that are bolded on the statistical leaders are guys that will be back in Madison for another year. So, but playing at home against a team can create a false sense of security when they've struggled. A team like Wisconsin isn't just any team. They have some tradition. They have some history and an identity of brute force when you think about Wisconsin football. They're built bigger and stronger. In some ways, can be more physical at the point of attack than you think. Wisconsin's danger is in their complexity. It's in their ways of doing things to go up the line of scrimmage and maybe add a tight end into the run game, and thinking that they're going to be a team that's going to run the ball first and establish a run game and utilize play action passing and bootlegs and get away from slinging the ball for 30 to 40 times a game. They're going to want to dominate the clock and keep Indiana's explosive offense on the sideline. And like I've said, this Wisconsin team defensively last year was not very bad. And when you think about them and looking statistically at their output, they were actually pretty good. But when you have an offense that's struggling to score and turning the ball over, putting the defense in a terrible position, you can see why they have struggled and why Luke Fickell is on the hot seat, so to speak. So that's some things to consider there when you think about Wisconsin. And this is a game, when you think about it, Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper, those type of guys in a game like this also play a big part in these type of ball games as well. These are the guys that are going to be counted on to make the big plays at the big point in time in a ball game, either to keep a drive going or potentially get the big first down that is needed to keep that drive going. This game will test Indiana's toughness and maturity. And again, this is a non-negotiable game in terms of playoff possibilities. Indiana will have to beat Wisconsin at home. Otherwise, their college football playoff potential could be in jeopardy if they would happen to lose to Wisconsin. And I look for Wisconsin this year to really bring back a sense of a running game. They are known as tailback U. They had Ron Dane to Jonathan Taylor, who were two big backs. that came out of Wisconsin. And when they've been really good, they've had those type of backs that ran the ball with violence. And I mean, just run you over for that matter, and always made offensive linemen right in their scheme of things. You can see some of their game against Nebraska last year. And again, they're a type of team that just on offense alone last year, they just gave up so many turnovers and inability to get conversion downs on third and short and third and medium. And they didn't have a bad ball club. If you look at them on the roster, it was just their ineffectiveness to make plays. And in a game like this, you have to be able to make plays. And that's one thing Indiana did last year on both sides of the balls. When they needed a big play, they usually had it. And that's a part about playing complementary football that Coach Cignetti talks about all the time when he discusses offense and defense. But you can see that Wisconsin is fully capable as a defense, but Nebraska, you can see they were able to get some big plays on some short throws, and they were able to drive the ball pretty effectively in this game, mostly due to Wisconsin's inability to get anything going offensively that was sustainable. And you can see on this run play right here, it's just a simple down block out that they gashed them in the C gap. And a Nebraska team that Indiana put one on, and they were playing pretty good as the year went on there in Nebraska with Raiola and what he was able to do and bring to the table for Nebraska last year. And you can just tell that they will be in a position this year to probably play spoiler for a lot of teams. That Nebraska team potentially could be a better team, but Wisconsin is a team that, again, having Bob Bostad on your staff will be a big advantage because he's going to know who was there and what they have, especially up front. And they're still going to have some of the guys that are very impressive when you would see them trot out on the field. And I remember coaching against Ron Dane when I was at Ball State, and you walked out on the field for pregame and, do all your stretching and stuff. And when they brought out their offensive line, I don't think they had a guy under 6'6". They were like 6'6", 6'7" all across the board. And it was amazing because they were good and they could move, but they would knock the pee willy out of you at the point of attack. So Indiana in this ball game will have to go right from the start and take advantage of a Wisconsin team that may come into Bloomington in tatters, especially, and with a possibility that Coach Fickle may not even survive the end of the season in the event that they don't get off to a very good start, because I'm not sure how much leeway they're going to give him there in Wisconsin. But we'll have to wait and see. I do think Indiana, again, with Mendoza offensively, Roman Hemby, and the running back, Kalen Black, you talk about all the firepower offensively that Indiana has. They should be able to put points up on the board no matter who they're across from. Big question, can they handle the big defenses like Penn State and Oregon enough where they can get some offensive firepower going? That is a to be determined. But against the rest of the Big Ten, they should be able to move the football effectively as they did this year. Jumping ahead to the Old Oaken Bucket game this year at Purdue. Barry Odom is the new head coach there in his first season. Just a terrible year for Purdue, and never seen a team that in their last game against Indiana just looked awful as a football team. They didn't even want any part of that day in Bloomington, too cold, too whatever. And Coach Cignetti had his boys ready to roll, and they went out there and put one on them. And I guarantee you, Barry Odom has got that game playing in their building right now as a vivid memory for his ball club. of them getting embarrassed in Bloomington last year, 66-0. And he will not, I guarantee you, he will not tolerate that from his ball club. He's too good a coach. He was at Missouri for a while, unfortunately got fired from there, but he went out to UNLV the last couple of years and resurrected that program to the point last year they were a very good football team. One thing I forgot to pass on about Wisconsin, Maryland quarterback Billy Edwards Jr. is there in Madison. He transferred from Maryland, and so they got themselves a pretty good quarterback there in Wisconsin this year, and he gives them the ability to do a lot of things as he's a pretty darn good quarterback. So, but Purdue over under 3.5, very, very shallow in terms of what the expectation from the outside world is for Purdue. 35,000 to win the conference titles. You're going to see it here. 1-11 on the year. The coaching staff last year, you could see they were 15.8 and just god awful on all sides of the football last year. When you think about themselves, but last year was a complete embarrassment. Their best player defensively, the Theinman kid, he transferred to Maryland. They've got some guys coming back that I think are going to be pretty good. And this rivalry game for the old Oaken Bucket date back to 1891. So we know what it brings to the forefront. Indiana last year was trying to capture it back after losing 4 straight years. So Indiana knows misery when it comes to this game, but now have turned, hopefully, it around where the misery lies in West Lafayette. But Purdue added 54 players. He completely overhauled his roster. And there are not too many guys back from the previous year there at Purdue. As you can see, only 3 offensive starters are still around and 5 on defense. 16 lettermen, but they lost 47 lettermen. So you can see that this is a team that has been completely remade in Barry Odom's vision and image for the Boilermakers. One thing to point out about them in years past, they've been a pretty big spread it out, throw it around type of game offensively. I doubt if that is going to be their recipe on offense. I think you're going to see a team that's more built in an identity of their head coach, who is a defensive-minded coach. And I could see them being more balanced in their approach, wanting to establish the run, trying to find the explosive plays hidden in play-action passes, and utilizing defense to hopefully set up the offense with shorter field position. But I doubt if you're going to see a team that comes out and throws it 50, 60 times a game in that game in West Lafayette. But right now, there's so many unknowns about Purdue. Who is their quarterback going to be? What do they have as a offense and defense? It's going to be ugly in the sense is that you're just not going to know who they have. Now, one thing for sure, what I'm sure Coach Sig and the offense and defense have done already in their summer prep is they've already evaluated Missouri and UNLV film to get an idea of what Barry Odom likes to be on offense and defense, and even for that matter, special teams. And then being able to see who they brought in and kind of piece the puzzles together. Now, with this being the last game of the year for Indiana, you're going to have 10 previous games to really have a good grasp of what Purdue wants to do both offensively and defensively. And Indiana will have a great opportunity then to really set their sights as far as scouting that game up and putting a game plan together that will take away what Purdue likes to do, and Indiana being able to exploit the weaknesses on defense for Purdue when that game comes around next year. But as anything, if Indiana goes in that game again, college football berth on the line, so to speak, it does that in itself will give Purdue all the emotional ups that they need for a game like that. This past year's game, even though that was part of the equation, their coaching staff had all been fired. It was a below zero game in Bloomington. It was really cold, and Purdue wanted no part of it. And Indiana did a great job of taking every chance they could to bury Purdue in their coffin on every play and drove a nail into it on each quarter. And by the time you got to halftime, that game was so far over. But Sig said, we're going to score 100 if we can, because this is our rival, and we want to make sure we put them down. And he did a pretty good job of that and almost got there. But 66-0 whipping of your rival in a game that you had not won in 4 years sent a strong message to the Boilermakers in West Lafayette that there was a new sheriff in Bloomington, and he wasn't going to take anything off of any Boilermaker when it came to the bucket game. And his objective is to win and win big. And I think we saw that last year of that game that ended up captivating Indiana's 11 and win season and getting them into the college football playoffs. I want to thank you for being here with me again tonight. Again, next week, what we're going to do is we start heading into more favorable situational stuff. We'll start breaking down this roster on a depth by depth basis, offense and defense, as we head into the 2025 season. But the foundation has been laid for the 2025 schedule. And while Indiana starts off with Old Dominion and Kennesaw State and Indiana State, we all know that week 4 against Illinois in Memorial Stadium with a sellout is the game that will set a big precedent of what this Indiana team season is going to look like. And right after that, they don't have time to rest because they head out to Iowa to face the Hawkeyes and then get a bye before they head to Oregon. And Indiana could have 2 big games if they hold serve and go into those both arenas with a undefeated record. But right now, we've laid the foundation, as I said, for the 2025 season. The schedule is in front of us. I've given my thoughts on what I believe Indiana will be able to accomplish, and I do think they will have an opportunity again this year to get back in the college football playoffs if they hold serve and do what I think they're capable of doing with the defense that they're going to have and an offense that I think may be better than a year ago. So stay tuned to next week, same time, Thursday night, 7:30 here on the Hoosier Tailgate on the Hoosier.com. Thanks to Colin McMahon for joining us from the Hoosier.com. For now, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. You have been watching the Hoosier Football Tailgate, all on the Hoosier.com. Good night, everybody.